On that cold, dark night, as heavy rain lashed against broken windows and the bitter wind howled down empty streets, something in the air felt wrong and raw. In a narrow alley lit only by a flickering street lamp, a man known for his ruthless deals and frozen heart found himself caught in an unexpected moment. There, amidst puddles and shadows, he saw a woman whose eyes held pain and quiet hope. Her ragged clothes and weary smile spoke of a hard life, yet there was a deep kindness shining in them that he had never seen before. In that unsettling moment, as thunder rolled in the distance, his carefully built world began to crumble. Daniel, a billionaire with a reputation for a heart of stone, had spent years building a fortune with no regard for feelings or the struggles of others. Business calls and boardroom battles filled his days, and nights were spent in empty, luxurious hotel rooms. He had learned long ago that emotions were a weakness, and he guarded his heart behind thick walls. But on this stormy night, fate led him to Lily, a homeless woman whose life had been a far cry from the wealth and comfort he knew. Daniel had left one of his many high-rise offices after a long day of meetings. His mind was busy calculating numbers and planning his next venture when he took a shortcut through a side street. The rain was unrelenting, and he was lost in thought about profit margins and market shares. That was when he heard soft footsteps and a muffled cry. Curious, he followed the sound and came upon the small figure of Lily, huddled under a worn blanket near a dumpster. Her eyes met his, and in them he saw a story of loss and survival. Without a word, something stirred inside him, a rare mix of pity, concern, and a spark of something he had long forgotten. He knelt beside her, offering his hand. Lily, surprised and hesitant, accepted the gesture. For the rest of that stormy night, sheltered from the cold in an abandoned building, they talked. Their conversation was simple and raw. Lily told him about her past, her lost family, and the hard days on the streets. Daniel listened, and for the first time in years, he felt something like real connection. That night, in a moment of vulnerability and unplanned passion, they shared more than words. When morning light began to push back the shadows, Daniel woke with an ache he could not explain. In the soft glow of dawn, he saw Lily sleeping peacefully beside him. The luxurious world he was used to now felt empty compared to the warmth of her presence. In that instant, he knew he could not let her slip away. With a trembling voice, he begged her not to leave. "Stay with me," he pleaded, the words tumbling out as if his heart depended on them. "I cannot go on without you." Before that night, Daniel's life was as pristine and controlled as the marble floors of his penthouse. He had built a vast business empire from nothing, conquering industries and earning respect in boardrooms with his sharp mind and even sharper tongue. Yet, behind the glimmering wealth lay a loneliness so deep it was almost invisible. His friends were few and shallow, his love life non-existent, and he had long ago learned to ignore the pangs of a heart that needed warmth. Every day, his life was a cycle of meetings, contracts, and more meetings. His only true companion was the sound of clacking keyboards and ringing phones. Emotions were an afterthought, something to be controlled or hidden. He had grown accustomed to thinking that love was a luxury he could never afford. But that single night with Lily challenged everything he believed about himself and the world he had built. Lily's life was a stark contrast to Daniel's world of wealth and order. She had grown up in a small town, known by everyone for her gentle smile and kind heart. Life, however, had not been easy for her. Losses and disappointments had led her down a difficult path. After a series of unfortunate events, a lost job, the death of a loved one, and a string of bad luck, Lily found herself with nowhere to go. The bustling city streets became her reluctant home. Despite the hardship, Lily never lost hope. She still believed in the simple joys of life, a warm meal, a kind word, and the beauty of a sunrise. Even on the coldest nights, her eyes held a spark that defied her circumstances. It was that spark that Daniel saw on that rainy night. In her, he found a light that was absent from his life for far too long. After that fateful night, Daniel's mind was filled with thoughts of Lily. The next few days passed in a blur of restless nights and a growing determination to find her again. He searched the streets where they had met, questioned the local shopkeepers, and even used his influence to check on shelters. Yet, Lily was nowhere to be found. The cold reality of his world began to creep back in, and for the first time, he felt a true fear. The fear of losing the one person who had brought light into his life. He remembered every detail of her face, the softness of her voice, and the way she looked at him, as if he were a mystery yet to be solved. Every moment with her had been simple and honest, a stark contrast to the false smiles and calculated gestures he was used to in his business meetings. The memory of that night fueled his search, and soon his days were consumed with thoughts of Lily. Daniel began to change. The man who once found solace in cold numbers and empty boardrooms now found himself lost in daydreams of a life that felt real. He started to see the value in simple gestures, a shared meal, a kind word, a quiet walk in the park. His heart, which had long been sealed off, started to crack open. Friends and colleagues noticed a change in him. His stern face softened, and he seemed more approachable. Though many could not understand this shift, for Daniel, it was a sign of hope. Days turned into weeks, and Daniel's search for Lily became an obsession. He hired help, pored over local records, and visited every shelter and soup kitchen he could find. All the while, his heart fought a battle between his old ways and the new feelings that Lily had awakened in him. He began to feel guilt over his past actions, the cold decisions made in the name of business, and the many hearts he had left unfulfilled in his rise to power. At night, when the city was quiet and his mind was left alone with his thoughts, he would replay that night again and again. He remembered the way Lily had smiled despite the hardships written on her face, how she had looked at him as if she saw through all the wealth and power into the real person inside. He recalled the tender moments, the gentle touches, and the shared warmth in the cold darkness. The more he remembered, the more he realized that his life had been empty before she came along. Despite the challenges, Daniel refused to turn back. Each time he thought of giving in to the pressure, he remembered the gentle voice of Lily urging him forward. "We have come too far to let fear take over," she would say. Together, they began to work on a plan, not just to protect Daniel's business, but to change the way it was run. Daniel started to invest in small community projects and charities, using his wealth to help those who, like Lily, had faced hardship. It was a slow process, but with each small success, he began to see that his transformation was not only possible, but also necessary. There were moments of deep sorrow, too. One rainy evening, as dark clouds gathered once again over the city, Daniel received news that one of his closest business partners had betrayed him, aligning with his rival in a bid for power. The betrayal cut deep, and for a moment, it threatened to undo all the progress he had made. He felt the old anger and bitterness rising up inside him. In that dark hour, he almost lost sight of the promise he had made to himself and to Lily. But then he thought of the night he had found Lily, of the warmth in her eyes that had melted the ice in his heart. He realized that he had two choices: to give in to the past or to forge a new future. With trembling determination, Daniel chose the latter. He reached out to those he had helped, rallied the support of community leaders, and fought back against the forces that sought to drag him back to his old life. It was a battle that tested his resolve, and every victory came with the knowledge that he was not just fighting for his empire, but for a love that had given his life meaning. As summer arrived, the city began to change with it. The long, dark days of winter gave way to warm evenings and bright mornings. Daniel's efforts to transform his business started to pay off. The community began to see him not as the cold billionaire he once was, but as a man who cared for the well-being of others. Lily, always by his side, became a symbol of hope for many. Her own story of struggle and survival resonated with people who had long been forgotten by the system. Yet, even in this new light, the shadow of the mysterious letter and the threat of his rival never fully disappeared. The suspense of that threat lingered in every whispered conversation, in every anxious look over Daniel's shoulder. It was as if the past was always just one misstep away from crashing down upon his new life. Despite the ongoing danger, Daniel remained steadfast in his love for Lily. He began to see that true strength came not from avoiding pain, but from facing it head-on with the support of those who truly cared. One day, as Daniel was leaving a charity event he had organized, a stranger approached him. The man's eyes were cold and hard, and he held a folded piece of paper in his hand. "You have changed too much, Mr. Daniel," the stranger said in a low voice. "There is a price to be paid for breaking your old ways." The words sent a chill down Daniel's spine, and for a moment, he wondered if he had made a mistake. But before the stranger could say more, he turned and disappeared into the crowd. Daniel clutched the paper tightly, the warning once again weighing on him. One evening, several months later, when the city was cloaked in a thick fog and the night was unusually silent, Daniel and Lily found themselves alone in the small apartment they now shared. The tension that had been building all along reached a fever pitch. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest as he paced the room, the mysterious warnings and the threat of his rival echoing in his mind. Lily sat on the worn sofa, her eyes full of concern. "Daniel, I can see that you are afraid. Tell me what is on your mind," she said softly. Her voice was calm and steady, a beacon in the storm of his thoughts. He stopped pacing and sat down beside her. "I feel like our past is coming back to haunt us," he admitted. "I keep getting warnings, and I worry that my old life will tear us apart." Lily took his hand and looked into his eyes with a steady gaze. "We cannot change the past, Daniel, but we can decide how we move forward. I trust you, and I believe in the love that we share. No matter what happens, we will face it together." Her words, simple and sincere, filled him with a new kind of strength. That night, as the fog thickened outside and the city slept under the weight of uncertainty, Daniel made a decision. He would confront the threat head-on. He called the police, reported the strange encounters, and even reached out to old friends in the business world who he trusted. He would not let fear dictate the future he was building with Lily. Every step he took was driven by the memory of that stormy night when he first met her, the night when her eyes, full of both sorrow and hope, broke through the armor he had built around his heart. In the days that followed, the tension slowly eased. The police investigation did not reveal any clear evidence of foul play, and Daniel's rival was forced to back down in the face of overwhelming public support for the changes Daniel was making. Yet, the mystery of the warnings continued to hover in the background like a dark cloud that refused to dissipate completely. Every phone call, every shadow in the window, reminded Daniel that there were still forces at work that sought to undo the progress he had fought so hard to achieve. One warm evening, as the city celebrated a local festival with bright lights and joyful music, Daniel and Lily walked hand in hand through the busy streets. The festive mood was contagious, and for a moment, the worries of the past seemed far away. Daniel felt a deep sense of peace and gratitude. He knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, he had found something worth fighting for, a love that was real and a future that was full of promise. Then, just as the night was drawing to a close and the celebrations began to wind down, Daniel received one final message. It was a short note slipped under the door of their small apartment. With shaky fingers, he unfolded the paper and read the message. "Your heart has changed, and so has your fate. Trust and love, and you will find the path forward." There was no signature, no hint of who had sent it. The message was both a warning and a promise, a final test of his resolve. Daniel felt the familiar knot of anxiety tighten in his chest. For a long moment, he stared at the note, trying to understand its meaning. Was this the final threat, or was it a sign that he was finally free from his old life? He looked over at Lily, who was quietly watching him from the doorway. Her eyes were calm, filled with quiet determination and love. In that moment, Daniel knew what he had to do. With all the courage he had gathered in the past months, he took a deep breath and said, "Lily, no matter what comes, I promise to stand by you. I have learned that a heart that is open to love is stronger than any threat or fear. I will face the darkness if it means keeping our light alive." Lily stepped forward and placed a gentle kiss on his cheek. "Then we will do it together," she whispered. "I believe that our love is stronger than any warning, any threat from the past." In the weeks that followed, the tension finally began to fade. The mysterious warnings turned into nothing more than distant echoes of a past that no longer held power over Daniel. His business rival eventually faded from the spotlight, and Daniel's transformation became a beacon of hope for many in the community. He continued to work on making his empire a force for good, one that lifted up those in need rather than crushing them under the weight of greed. Lily, too, found a new path in life. With Daniel's support, she was able to attend classes and learn new skills. She became a voice for those who had been ignored for too long, and her gentle spirit inspired many to believe in the power of second chances. Their days were filled with small acts of kindness, a shared meal in the kitchen, a walk in the park, a quiet evening at home talking about dreams and plans for the future. Every moment was a step toward healing, a testament to the power of love to change even the hardest of hearts. One bright morning, as the city awoke to the sound of birds and the soft glow of the sun, Daniel and Lily sat on the small balcony of their modest home. They held hands, their fingers intertwined, and watched as the world around them stirred with new life. Daniel spoke softly. "I used to believe that wealth and power were all that mattered. But you have taught me that love, kindness, and hope are far more valuable." Lily smiled and rested her head on his shoulder. "We all have a choice, Daniel. I chose to see the good in you when no one else did. And together, we have built something beautiful." As the seasons changed and the years passed, the memory of that cold, dark night became a distant echo, a reminder of how far they had come. The love that began in the midst of chaos and uncertainty had grown into a deep, unbreakable bond. Daniel's heart, once sealed off in ice, now beat with the warmth of compassion and joy. And Lily, who had known only hardship and loneliness for so long, found in him a partner who valued her for who she was. Their story was not without challenges, but each obstacle only served to make their love stronger. They learned to trust one another, to forgive the past, and to look forward with hope. The warnings and threats that had once haunted Daniel's nights faded into mere memories, replaced by the steady rhythm of two hearts beating as one. In time, Daniel and Lily built a life that was simple yet full of meaning. Their home became a place of comfort and warmth, a safe haven from a world that often seemed too harsh and uncaring. They spent their days giving back to the community, helping those who were struggling, and sharing the lesson that love could truly change a life. Friends and even former enemies began to see that a change of heart was possible, even for a man who had once seemed as cold as stone. And so, in the quiet glow of a peaceful evening, as they sat together watching the sunset paint the sky with gentle hues, Daniel squeezed Lily's hand and said, "I once thought I had everything I ever wanted, yet I was empty. But you, with your simple hope and kind spirit, filled that emptiness with love and purpose." Lily looked up at him, her eyes shining with unshed tears of joy. "I never thought I would find love in a place like this," she replied softly. "But you showed me that even the coldest hearts can be warmed by kindness." The years that followed were filled with moments of quiet happiness and shared laughter. Their love became a legend in the city, a story of a man who dared to change and a woman who believed in the goodness of people. In every corner of the community, people remembered how Daniel, the billionaire with a heart of stone, had been transformed by a single night of unexpected passion and the gentle strength of a homeless woman who refused to be forgotten. At long last, the suspense of that uncertain night was replaced by a future filled with hope and promise. The mysterious warnings and threats became nothing more than a reminder of the darkness that once loomed over them, a darkness that was finally banished by the light of true love. In a world that often seemed divided by wealth and loss, Daniel and Lily found that the simplest truth was the most powerful. Love can change everything. Their story ended not with the finality of a tragic tale, but with the soft promise of a new beginning every day, a happy ending that was written in the small moments of kindness, the shared dreams, and the unyielding belief that every heart, no matter how hardened, can be mended by love. And so, as the city settled into a gentle calm and the stars shone brightly overhead, Daniel and Lily continued their journey together, hand in hand, ready to face whatever the future might bring. for they knew that true love was worth every risk, every sleepless night, and every moment of uncertainty. Their love had triumphed over fear and doubt, proving that even the coldest heart can learn to beat with warmth and hope. Hey everyone, thank you so much for being here and supporting what I do. Your comments and feedback mean the world to me. If you enjoyed this, please take a moment to leave a comment and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future updates. I love hearing from you, and your support helps keep this community growing. Thanks again, and let's keep the conversation going.
The ballroom fell into a stunned silence as the glass shattered, not from a clumsy waiter or a wild party guest. No, it came from her hand. A crystal wine glass, once untouched, now lay in jagged pieces on the marble floor, its red contents splattered like blood near her white heels. Everyone turned, but it wasn't the glass they stared at. It was the woman who dropped it. Her brown skin stood out in the sea of pale, powdered faces. She didn't flinch, didn't look sorry. She just stood there, shoulders straight, chin high, her expression blank like she had rehearsed the moment 1,000 times. He was across the room, tall, impossibly handsome, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her yearly salary. His blue eyes had been scanning the crowd, bored, detached, until they met hers. Their eyes locked. Then came the whispers. She's the only one he invited who didn't come with diamonds. She's the girl who said no to him, right? Who does she think she is? And yet, the most wanted man in the city, Logan Pierce, began to move, slowly at first, then faster. Every step he took toward her pushed more air out of the room. Still, she didn't move. Not even when he was close enough to whisper, "Amara, what are you doing?" She looked up at him, a soft fire in her eyes. "You know exactly what I'm doing." And then she walked out, past security, past guests, past the shocked gasp of his mother. No one had ever walked away from Logan Pierce. Not until Amara, and not after what she had just found out. She never wanted a billionaire 3 months earlier. Amara Clark stood behind the counter at Rose's Cafe, tying her apron and trying not to be annoyed. It was the 3rd time that week her coworker had called out, leaving her to open the place alone. The smell of cinnamon rolls baking in the oven filled the air. Soft jazz played in the background. And outside, the city was waking up. She liked the quiet mornings. No one knew her here. No one cared about who she was or who she wasn't. She could be invisible, just another face behind the counter. That was how she liked it. Until the black SUV pulled up outside. The door opened and out stepped a man in a gray wool coat, sharp jaw and sunglasses. He didn't look like the type who drank coffee from a place like this. He looked like he belonged in a glass tower, drinking something imported from Italy. He walked in, and the air changed. Amara didn't look up right away. She was used to men trying to act important. She didn't care about money. She didn't care about looks. What did any of that matter if people didn't treat you right? But this man, he didn't speak right away. He just stood there, studying the pastry case. Then he said, "What do you recommend?" His voice was deep, not pushy, curious. She glanced at him. "Nothing too expensive," she replied dryly. "Wouldn't want you to go broke?" He smirked. "I'll take the risk." Still, she didn't smile. "Apple scone, fresh, not too sweet," she said, handing it to him. "And if you don't like it, there's a refund policy." He took the bag. "Is that right?" "No," she said. "There's not." For the first time, he laughed. A real laugh. Not the fake kind rich men give when they want something. She didn't know who he was. He didn't tell her. He came back the next day, And the day after that, always ordering something small, always trying to talk. And she kept serving him like he was anyone else, because to her, that's all he was. The man behind the suit Logan Pierce was tired of women. Not in the shallow way, he had never been short on attention. Women wanted his money, his name, his power. Even when they said they didn't, they always did. Until her. Amara, the girl who didn't Google him, who didn't try to impress him, who didn't even blink when she found out who he was. He had been so used to charm working like magic, but she didn't fall for it. She wasn't impressed by his private jet or his corner office. She liked quiet things. Books, music, tea instead of champagne. He found himself telling his assistant to cancel meetings just to get coffee from her cafe. His friends noticed. "You've got that look," his business partner said one afternoon. "What look?" "The I met someone who doesn't care about my bank account look." Logan didn't deny it. He was falling. And it scared him, because he wasn't used to wanting something he couldn't control. Amara had reasons. Good ones. Her last relationship had left her broken. Her ex had used her kindness, lied to her, and left her in debt. She had trusted him, given him everything, and he had walked away like it meant nothing. So now, she kept her heart locked tight. She didn't care how kind Logan seemed, or how gentle he was. She didn't want to fall again. Not for anyone. Not even him. But sometimes, when he looked at her like she was the only one in the world, it was hard not to feel something. Still, she told herself, he'll leave too. They all do. The rain came down hard that night. Amara was closing the cafe early. The city streets were slick, the wind strong. She was locking the back door when she heard the familiar sound of his voice. "You need a ride." She turned. Logan stood under a black umbrella, already soaked around the shoulders. "You followed me?" "I waited," he said simply. "I don't need a ride. I didn't ask what you needed. I asked what I could give." She hesitated. She hated how his words felt like warm air in a freezing room. But the truth was she didn't want to walk home in this storm. So she nodded. In the car, he didn't talk much. The quiet between them wasn't awkward. When they arrived at her apartment, she surprised herself. "You want tea?" He followed her up the stairs, and soon they sat on her small rooftop, under a covered awning, sipping hot mugs. "I like it up here," he said, looking out at the skyline. "Feels honest." She looked at him. "You don't seem like a man who needs honesty." "I do," he said. "More than you think." That night, they didn't kiss. They didn't touch. But something real happened. Something small and serious and soft. A week later, Amara got the call from her sister, crying. Mom collapsed again. Amara dropped everything. She didn't ask Logan for help. She didn't tell him anything. She just left a note at the cafe. "Family emergency. Gone for a few days." Logan didn't hear from her. He called, texted, nothing. It stirred something deep in him, something old and ugly. The fear that maybe she was like everyone else. That maybe she disappeared because she wanted something and hadn't gotten it. But that wasn't it. She was sitting in a hospital waiting room, holding her mother's hand, trying not to cry. Her mom had worked her whole life, cleaning houses, raising 2 girls on her own. Now her body was giving out. Amara used the little savings she had to cover the bills. She didn't call Logan because she didn't want to owe him anything, not even comfort. When she came back, she returned 5 days later. Pale, tired, quiet. Logan showed up at the cafe, jaw tight, eyes searching. "Where were you?" he asked. "My mom was sick." "You didn't think I'd want to know?" "I didn't want to owe you anything." He took a breath. trying not to raise his voice. "You wouldn't owe me for caring. I can't afford to depend on people like you," she whispered, "because one day you'll decide I'm not enough." And he saw it. All of it. Her fear, her pain, her belief that she wasn't worthy of love unless she was useful, perfect, flawless. He stepped closer. "You don't have to be strong all the time." She blinked. "I do." "Not with me," he said. And for the first time, her eyes filled with tears in front of him. Falling slowly after that night, things changed. They started spending more time together, but quietly. No one knew. She didn't want to be on magazine covers or in tabloids. She didn't want the attention that came with dating the city's most powerful man. And Logan didn't push. They read books together, cooked simple meals, took walks in the park after dark when no one could see them. He loved how she saw the world, how she noticed small things, like the sound of leaves under her shoes, or the way sunlight hit glass at certain angles. She made him feel like a person, not a product. And for the first time in his life, he didn't want anything more than that. But deep down, Amara still held back. Because part of her believed this happiness couldn't last. People like her didn't get fairy tales, right? He shouldn't have planned one evening. Logan showed up with a suit and a simple black dress. "What's this?" Amara asked. "There's a charity gala tonight. I want you to come with me." Her stomach dropped. "I don't belong at places like that." "You belong anywhere I am," he said softly. She looked at the dress. It was beautiful, simple, elegant, but it felt like a costume, like armor. Still, she went. The room was gold and loud. Glass clinking, people laughing in forced ways, cameras flashing. Every eye turned when Logan walked in with her. Whispers followed them. Who was she? Why her? Was it real? Amara tried to stay calm, but her chest tightened with every passing second. Logan squeezed her hand under the table. "Just stay with me," he whispered. But by dessert, she excused herself and slipped out to the balcony, needing air. She didn't see the woman who followed her, didn't hear the heels clicking behind her. "Nice dress," the woman said. She was tall, blonde, cold. "Did Logan buy it for you?" Amara turned slowly. "Who are you?" "I used to be you. Until I wasn't enough either." Amara said nothing. "Enjoy the spotlight while you can," the woman added, voice sharp like ice. "He always leaves, especially when it starts to get real." Then she walked away. And Amara stood there, heart thudding in her chest, that old fear clawing its way back up. She kept hearing the woman's voice in her head. Her doubts screamed louder than reason. So she packed a small bag, left him a note again. "I'm sorry. I don't think I belong in your world. I need time." Then she disappeared. This time, she didn't even tell her sister where she was going. She just needed to breathe without everyone looking at her like she didn't deserve him. She stayed in a tiny town by the coast, working at a bookstore, quiet days, long walks, nights alone. But she missed him. Every single day. She missed his laugh, the way he listened, the way he saw her. But she couldn't go back. Not unless she was sure she wasn't just another moment in his life. Logan didn't take it well. He had looked everywhere, called everyone, even offered rewards to people who might have seen her. He didn't care about pride, or image, or what the media said. He just wanted her back. His mother warned him, "She's not like us, Logan. She'll never be comfortable in your world." "That's why I love her," he said. "She doesn't care about any of this." But the truth was she didn't know where to look anymore. Weeks passed, and part of him started to think maybe she had chosen to stay gone. She never meant to send it, was meant for herself. A letter she wrote in a journal. Just her thoughts. Just her feelings. but her younger cousin found it, read it, and sent it. To Logan. The envelope arrived at his office. No return name, but the handwriting was familiar. Inside, the letter read, "Sometimes I wonder if I ran because I was scared of being loved the right way. I've never known what that feels like. Not really. I kept waiting for you to change, to hurt me, to turn cold, but you never did. And that scared me even more, because I started to believe it was real. I miss you, even if I don't deserve you." Logan dropped everything, because now we knew where to find her. The bell above the door chimed. Amara looked up from the register, her heart dropping when she saw him. Logan? He looked tired, wet from the rain, eyes full of something between hurt and hope. She didn't speak, neither did he. Then finally, he walked toward her and placed the letter on the counter. "You could have just told me how you felt." She looked down, unable to meet his gaze. "I didn't think you'd want someone who's unsure." "I didn't want perfect," he said. "I wanted you." The store was quiet. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the letter. "I didn't mean for you to read it. I'm glad I did." A pause. "I've been lost without you," he added. And she saw how real it was, how much he meant it. She stepped around the counter, heart beating fast. "You came all this way?" "I'd walk further if I had to." And this time, when he kissed her, she didn't pull away. They returned quietly. No press, no parties. Just the two of them, holding hands in his car, driving into the city like it was a new beginning. Amara still kept her job at the cafe. She didn't want gifts, didn't want favors, but she let him be there, let him help her when she needed it. Slowly, she let herself believe he wouldn't run. He introduced her to his closest friends. He even brought her to a company event, not a gala, just a small dinner. And this time, she felt ready. People still stared, still whispered, but now, she didn't care. Because every time she doubted, he squeezed her hand. And it reminded her she wasn't alone. The envelope. It came in the mail. No name, no return address. Just a manila envelope, placed in her cafe locker one morning. Inside was a USB drive and a photo. A blurry picture of Logan outside a hotel room, alone. But the implication was clear. A printed message on the photo read, "He's not who you think he is." Her stomach turned. She didn't believe it, didn't want to believe it. But she couldn't ignore it either. When she asked him, Logan looked confused. "I haven't been to that hotel in over a year," he said, "before I even met you." But Amara's hands were shaking. "I want to believe you," she whispered. "Then do," he begged. "Please." The file on the USB opened to a video. Surveillance footage. Logan in a hallway, talking to someone. She couldn't see the other person clearly. The video had no sound, but Logan looked angry. He grabbed the person's collar, shoved them, walked away. Amara sat still for a long time, then rewound it. Over and over. It didn't look like the Logan she knew. He looked cold, cruel. Why would someone send her this? Who recorded it? Why now? Her chest tightened. She needed answers. And for the first time since she met him, she didn't know if she could trust him completely. The next morning, Amara couldn't pretend everything was normal. She barely looked at Logan. He noticed. "You saw something," he said. "Something more." Amara didn't answer. "I need you to talk to me." She finally looked up. "I saw a side of you I've never seen before. Cold, angry, like someone with something to hide." His jaw clenched. "I was protecting my company," he said slowly. "That video was from over a year ago. A former executive tried to blackmail you, leaked sensitive documents. I confronted him outside that hotel. I was angry, yes, but I never hurt anyone. And now someone wants me to believe otherwise? He nodded. They're trying to make you walk away, because they know you're my weakness. Her eyes widened slightly. I've had people come after my business before, he continued, but never someone I loved. Loved. He had never said it out loud. And the words sat in the air like a stone dropped in still water. But even then, a part of her still wasn't sure. Because the truth wasn't in his wordsit, was in what came next. 2 days later, Amara got another letter. It wasn't anonymous this time. It was signed, Vanessa Caldwell, the same woman from the gala balcony. Inside was a simple message. I told you he wasn't who you thought. He ruined my life. Let me show you how. Amara couldn't ignore it. She agreed to meet. In a small restaurant outside the city, Vanessa sat across from her with tight lips and cold eyes. I was engaged to Logan 5 years ago, she said. Amara's eyes widened. Engaged? He broke it off, said he didn't love me anymore. Then 2 weeks later, my father's business lost a major contract tone that Logan controlled. We went bankrupt. You think he did it on purpose? I know he did. Amara's head spun. You've been watching us? I saw the headlines, the photos, you, and I thought, finally someone who doesn't know who he really is. Or maybe I'm the one who actually does, Amara said quietly. Vanessa leaned in. Just ask yourself how many women before you thought the same. That night, Amara couldn't sleep. She sat on the couch, staring at the city lights, waiting for Logan to come home. When he walked in, he knew immediately. You saw her? Amara nodded. She said you were once engaged, that her father's company was destroyed after you left her. Logan looked away, ran a hand through his hair. It's true. We were engaged. But I didn't love her. I was young, and I did what was expected. And the business deal? I had nothing to do with it. Her father broke a contract with us first. Our legal team just responded. It wasn't revenge. It was business. She believed his voice. But she didn't know if she believed the world he came from. I don't want to be another casualty, she said. You're not. How do I know that? He stepped closer. Because this time, I'd walk away from everything else before I ever let go of you. In the days that followed, Amara pulled back. She needed time to think, to breathe. Vanessa kept texting. Logan kept checking in. And Amara felt like she was standing between two cliffs, unsure of which way was safe. Her sister called. Do you love him? She asked. I do, Amara whispered. Then fight for him. But what if I get hurt? What if you don't? And for once, Amara stopped thinking about what could go wrong, and started thinking about what could go right. Amara decided to take control. If she was going to stay, she needed the full truth, not words, not emotion, but facts. She reached out to a private investigator, gave him one task: find everything on Logan Pierce, his past relationships, his business records, anything that was ever covered up. A week later, she received a sealed folder. Inside, dates, timelines, testimonies. There were no lawsuits against Logan, no sealed settlements, no pattern of mistreatment or abuse. In fact, there were dozens of internal emails written by employees thanking him for protecting their jobs during a company shakeup years ago. Even the incident with Vanessa's father wasn't what she claimed. Her father had used insider information to short Logan's company stock. She was the one who tried to sabotage Logan first. And Logan had responded with evidence, not revenge. Amara sat back in her chair, heart pounding. He wasn't perfect, but he wasn't a monster. He was honest, protective, sometimes too aggressive when defending what he loved, but never cruel. Vanessa had twisted the story, because she couldn't stand that Logan had finally found someone who loved him for real. That night, Amara sent Vanessa a message. "You lied." The reply came instantly. "He'll break you. Just wait." But Amara didn't feel fear this time. She felt angry, not just at Vanessa, but at herself for almost walking away from someone who had done nothing but love her. Amara called Logan. "I need to see you," she said. He arrived within 30 minutes. No questions, no hesitation. She handed him the folder. "I had you investigated." He blinked, then nodded slowly. "Okay. I had to know for myself." "I get it. You're not what people say you are." "No," he said softly. "I'm not." Then she stepped closer, voice trembling. "And I'm not going to run again." His breath caught. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "I don't want to be afraid of love anymore." And with a deep, quiet breath, Logan pulled her into his arms like it was the first time all over again. Not in a flashy Wayno magazine spreads or red carpet stunts, just a photo, shared on Logan's social media. A simple image of them walking down a quiet street, holding hands, smiling. The caption read, "Home is wherever you are." The world responded fast. Some were cruel, some were shocked, but most were happy for them. And Amara? She didn't care about anyone else's opinion anymore. She had found peace and real love, and for once, she allowed herself to keep it. Their rooftop, where they first shared tea, where they first felt something real. He set a small velvet box between them and waited. Amara smiled, tears already rising. "You don't have to get down on one knee," she whispered. "I wasn't going to," he said with a smirk. "I know better than to propose to a woman like you without asking first." She laughed. Then she took the ring, slipped it on, and said the one word that mattered. "Yes." A security guard at Logan's headquarters spotted smoke in the basement. Then the alarms rang out. Fire trucks arrived. It wasn't a huge fire, but it was enough to damage the lower floors of the building, enough to delay business, enough to send a message, because someone had started it, and that someone had left behind a red envelope. No letter, just a photo of Amara, crossed out in black marker. The police questioned everyone: staff, contractors, security, even Logan himself. But Logan already knew who was behind it. Vanessa. He told Amara that night, "She's trying to scare you off." Amara stayed calm. "It won't work. She's unstable. I should have done more. I should have stopped her years ago." "She didn't break me then," Amara said, "and she won't now." Still, Logan hired private security to watch over Amara for the next few weeks. Not because he didn't trust her strength, but because he refused to risk losing her. Not now. Not after everything. She was caught on camera trying to bribe a former employee to plant fake evidence of fraud against Logan's company. Her plan was to leak the footage to the press and ruin him. But this time, the employee went straight to the police. Vanessa was arrested for conspiracy, trespassing, and property damage linked to the fire. When Amara read the news, she felt nothing. No anger, no relief. Just peace. Because it was finally over. Just a quiet ceremony. Close friends. Her sister, his assistant, the cafe staff. People who had been part of their real journey. Amara wore a simple cream dress, her curls pinned with white jasmine flowers. Logan wore the same suit he wore the day they met, no tuxedo, no bow tie, just him. They married in a garden at sunset. No photographers, no gossip blogs. Just a soft breeze and two promises made in the open air. "I'll never try to change you," he said. and I'll never run again," she answered. Home a year later, they sat on the same rooftop, sipping tea, holding hands, watching their toddler wobble around on chubby legs. The city buzzed below them, but up here, it was quiet. He looked at her with the same soft wonder he always had. "How did I get lucky enough to find you?" he asked. She smiled. "You didn't find me. We crashed into each other. And I'll never let go." She leaned her head on his shoulder, watching the sky change colors. She had once been the girl who wanted nothing from him. Now she had everything she never dared to ask for. And it was real.
Jason Alcott stared at the hospital monitors, his heart pounding so hard it hurt. Outside the room, a nurse spoke in hushed tones with a doctor who glanced in, his face full of worry. Jason could see the worry, too, reflected in the lines on his grandmother's face. She was so pale, looking even more fragile than when he first found out she was sick. He felt helpless. Money could not protect her from age or illness. As the head of a massive global company, Jason was used to solving every problem by signing a check or calling in favors. But tonight, none of that would matter if his grandmother did not pull through. This was the person who raised him, who gave him real love when the rest of the world only wanted his power or his wealth. If he lost her, what would he have left? Yet, this was not the only threat pressing on Jason's mind. There was another danger lurking outside the hospital walls, a plot brewing at his own board of directors. Jason had built his fortune on strong deals and risky bets, but now those same board members were asking if he had gone soft. He had heard whispers of a plan to vote him out of his own company. If they succeeded, he would lose the empire he had worked so hard to grow. Everything was slipping through his fingers. The one person who truly loved him, and the company he had spent his whole life building. Fear churned inside him like a storm. But how did Jason Alcott reach this frightening moment, standing by his grandmother's hospital bed, terrified for her life, and worried about betrayal at work? It all started 2 months earlier, when a single phone call and a chance meeting with a humble caregiver named Rosa Moore changed his entire world. Jason Alcott was 37 years old, head of Alcott Holdings, and one of the richest men in the country. He owned a sleek penthouse in the heart of the city and traveled by private jet. Wherever he went, he felt people's eyes on him, some with admiration, some with envy, and many with hidden motives. He had grown comfortable with this. Over the years, he stopped caring whether people liked him. He told himself he did not need anyone. Money and success were his armor. On a warm Monday morning, Jason arrived at Alcott Tower, the building that rose like a giant among the city skyline. His assistant, Carla, rushed to meet him at the elevator. "Mr. Alcott, the board meeting is in 15 minutes, she said, stepping aside so he could pass. "I'm aware," he replied, moving swiftly down the hall. Everyone scurried out of his way. He was known for his cutting stare and no-nonsense approach. When you ran a giant business empire, people either feared you or tried to charm you for their own gain. Jason was accustomed to both. In the boardroom, he sat at the head of a long, glossy table. The directors discussed a new acquisition, praising Jason for his business instincts. Alcott Holdings would gain another $100 million in value, and everyone in the room congratulated each other. "Let's celebrate your brilliant move, Jason," said Stella Barnes, a sharp-eyed board member with perfect hair and a bright red blazer. She had joined the company's board a year ago and had made it clear she wanted more than a business partnership with Jason. "Dinner tonight?" He gave her a polite smile. "I have other plans," he said, not bothering to elaborate. If Stella was disappointed, she hid it well. She gave a small nod and left with the others once the meeting wrapped up. Jason went back to his corner office, which looked out over the city he practically owned. He sat at his massive desk, scanning his emails until his personal cell phone rang. He almost ignored it. Few people had that number, and he disliked interruptions. But something told him to pick up. "Mr. Alcott," said an unfamiliar woman. "I'm calling from Garden View Care Center. I'm one of the nurses. Your grandmother, Harriet, is here. She had a mild health setback. Her doctor wants to adjust her medication. We think you should know, and she's been asking for you." Jason's stomach tightened. Grandmother Harriet was 85. She was the only family he had left. He paid for the best care and made sure she stayed in a comfortable facility, but he visited less often than he should. Work had a way of taking all his time. "Is she okay?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "She's stable," the nurse said, "but she misses you, sir. I'll be there tomorrow." He hung up and stared at his planner, which was stacked with meetings for the next day. He closed his eyes, remembering a simpler time. He could almost see a younger Harriet, guiding him around her small garden, teaching him how to plant flowers. Before his parents died, before the money became his entire life, Harriet's yard was his favorite place to be. It pained him that now, in her later years, she was in a care home without him by her side. Jason pressed the intercom. "Carla, clear my schedule for tomorrow afternoon." The next day, Jason showed up at Garden View in his expensive black sports car. A few staff members looked out the window, clearly surprised to see such a fancy vehicle. He entered the building and was greeted by a warm, middle-aged receptionist. "Mr. Alcott," she said politely. "Mrs. Harriet is out in the sunroom with Rosa Moore." "Who is Rosa Moore?" Jason asked, removing his dark sunglasses. "She is a care assistant, one of the best we have. She spends a lot of time helping your grandmother." Jason followed the signs to the sunroom, a bright space with comfortable chairs and big windows letting in natural light. He saw Harriet first, her white hair brushed neatly, her tiny figure wrapped in a pink cardigan. At her side was a young woman in simple pale blue scrubs. She was kneeling beside Harriet's chair, holding her hand and making her laugh about something. For a moment, Jason just watched. He could not remember the last time he heard his grandmother's genuine laughter. Rosa's voice was gentle, her head bent toward Harriet as though she deeply cared about every word Harriet was saying. Then Harriet spotted him. "Jason, my boy," she called. He hurried forward and crouched to hug her. "Grandma, how are you feeling?" "Tired," she admitted, "but less lonely now that you're here." Rosa stood and gave him a polite smile. She had warm brown eyes and curly hair tied back. Her scrubs were plain, and she wore no jewelry. But there was a glow about her that drew Jason's attention. "You must be Mr. Alcott," she said. "I'm Rosa Moore." Jason offered his hand. "Jason is fine," he said. "Thank you for looking after my grandmother." "I'm just doing my job," Rosa replied, though Harriet quickly shook her head. "She does far more than that," Harriet insisted. "She brings me books, plays card games with me, and even helps me with my little knitting projects when my hands get shaky." Rosa smiled modestly. "Your grandmother is a joy. She has so many stories." Harriet's eyes brightened. "And so does he. You should have heard his big business deal last week. Jason is the best at closing deals." She patted Rosa's hand. "I'm sure he could give us both lessons on how to be more confident." Jason felt a hint of embarrassment. He was used to praise in a boardroom, not in a personal setting like this. Rosa looked at him carefully, and he got the sense she was not as starstruck by his power as most people were. It was both unsettling and refreshing. Rosa glanced at the clock. "I have to help another resident with her physical therapy. Mrs. Harriet, I'll be back in an hour to see if you need anything else." "Good to meet you, Jason." He nodded and watched her leave. Harriet caught his gaze and teased. "Pretty, isn't she?" Jason cleared his throat, avoiding his grandmother's knowing smile. "She seems very kind." They spent the next hour chatting, Harriet telling him about her days in the care center. She also gently scolded him for not visiting more often. He felt the old guilt return. He promised he would come back soon and more regularly. Harriet's face lit up at that, but Jason still felt uneasy. How many times had he promised to visit? Before leaving, he passed the nurse's station and saw Rosa typing on a computer. On impulse, he stopped beside her. "Thank you for everything you do for my grandmother," he said. She looked up. "You're welcome. She's truly special." Jason studied Rosa's face. which showed genuine warmth without any sign of hidden motives. For a man who could spot a fake smile from across a boardroom, this was surprising. He was not used to such pure sincerity. If there's anything you need for her, any resources or equipment, just let me know. I'll pay for anything that might help. Rosa's smile stayed kind but did not grow wider. We have what we need here. Sometimes what our residents want most is just a visit, especially from their family. Jason felt like he had been gently corrected. He left the building feeling more unsettled than he had in a long time. Instead of returning to the office that evening, Jason drove around aimlessly, thinking of Harriet and remembering the nurse's words. What our residents want most is a visit. He realized throwing money at problems was his usual response. But Harriet's loneliness could not be solved by cash. As he drove through the city, his route led him to a quieter neighborhood full of small homes and worn-down buildings. He recognized a community garden he had once seen highlighted on a local news segment. Groups of volunteers came there to grow vegetables for families who could not afford fresh produce. Through the fence, Jason saw a few people still working in the fading light. He nearly drove on, but then he spotted a familiar silhouette, Rosa Moore. She wore older jeans, a plain t-shirt, and gardening gloves. She laughed, with a teenage boy helping her pull weeds. It was a very different Rosa from the quiet caretaker in Scrubs. There was an open happiness about her that made him curious. Jason realized he was idling on the side of the road, basically watching her from his car. That thought made him feel uneasy, like he was crossing a line. He left before she could see him, wondering why he felt drawn to her. It was not just her looks. There were plenty of beautiful women in his life. Rosa was genuine, real, and that was rare in his world. True to his word, Jason visited Harriet again the next day, bringing fresh flowers. She beamed to see him. Rosa was in another part of the building, so he did not see her at first. As Harriet dozed after her medication, Jason wandered the care center halls. He found a small library filled with donated books and recognized the voice at the other end of the room. Rosa's, guiding an elderly woman to a seat. When Rosa caught sight of him, she smiled but quickly returned to her work. He approached her after she was done. "I didn't expect to see you here so soon," Rosa said, her tone friendly but not overly familiar. "I'm trying to be a better grandson," Jason explained. He then noticed the stack of books in her arms. "Need help carrying those?" She paused, as though unsure if he was serious, then handed him a few. "Sure. They're new donations, but we have to sort them. Are you good with organizing?" Jason almost laughed. He organized multi-million-dollar deals daily. But this was different. "I can handle a few books," he replied. Together, they sorted the books into categories. Some were for light reading, while others were medical references for the nursing staff. As they worked, Jason asked about her community garden. Rosa seemed surprised he knew about it, but he told her he had once heard about it on the news. Her face lit up. "Yes, that's the Evergreen Community Garden. We grow tomatoes, peppers, squash, whatever we can, then we give most of it to local families in need and a nearby food pantry. It's not big yet, but every season we try to expand." "Do you need extra funding?" he asked out of habit. Rosa shook her head gently. "Money isn't everything, you know. The garden is kept alive by people who care enough to show up and work the land. We can always use extra volunteers." Jason did not miss her hint. She was not rejecting his offer of help. She was pointing out that actions matter more than cash. He found that refreshing, but also awkward. He was the kind of man who usually just wrote a check. Yet, part of him wanted to see her in that environment again. Over the next few days, Jason somehow made time to drop by Garden View nearly every afternoon. Harriet was thrilled. Rosa was polite, and Jason felt each short chat drew him closer to her. He watched how she helped the residents, laughing with them, encouraging them, and speaking to them like they still had much to offer the world. She brought something bright to that place. Harriet often teased him about how he always arrived during Rosa's shift. One day, Rosa caught him by surprise when she said, "We're organizing a volunteer day at the garden on Saturday. You could come if you want, but dress in clothes you don't mind getting dirt on." Jason hesitated. thinking about his usual weekend routine, sealing big corporate deals or hosting clients on his yacht. How would people react if they saw him in the dirt? But he found himself saying, "I'll be there." Saturday morning, Jason arrived at Evergreen Community Garden wearing sneakers, jeans, and a t-shirt, items he had to dig out from the back of his closet. He was used to wearing tailored suits. He felt strangely nervous. The garden was already alive with people. Children running around, older volunteers tending rows of plants, and a few teenagers building new raised beds. In the middle of it all stood Rosa, explaining how to plant seedlings. Her smile brightened when she noticed him. "You actually came," she said. "I said I would," he replied, handing her a cup of coffee he had picked up on the way. "Figured you might need this." "Thanks," Rosa said, sounding grateful. Then she placed a tray of young tomato plants in Jason's hands. "We're putting these in the new section. Let me show you how to do it." She bent down, demonstrating how to dig a small hole, place the seedling, and cover it with soil. Jason followed suit. He was clumsy at first, but Rosa showed patience. Soon, he was planting on his own. People walked by, some recognizing him as the famous billionaire, others not caring who he was as long as he was willing to help. As they worked side by side under the sun, Jason felt a sense of calm he had not experienced in years. By noon he was sweaty, his hands dirty, but he felt oddly proud of his row of freshly planted seedlings. The children chased each other around the garden, giggling. He noticed Rosa stopping now and then to smile at them or hand them water. It all felt so different from his typical life of wealth and polished events. They broke for lunch around a row of picnic tables set up under a large tree. Families shared homemade dishes, the laughter and chatter almost drowning out any formal introductions. Rosa introduced Jason to her younger sister, Dina Moore, a lively woman who gave Jason a suspicious once-over. "Dina," Rosa said, "this is Jason. He's Harriet's grandson." Dina raised an eyebrow. "The famous grandson who runs a billion-dollar company." Jason chuckled uncomfortably. "That's me, guilty as charged. But I'm here as a volunteer today." Dina studied him for a moment, then shrugged. "Well, if Rosa invited you, you can't be that bad." She grinned at her sister, then walked away to help someone else. After lunch, Jason stayed to build a wooden trellis for climbing beans. An older man named Lewis Parker guided him through it. Though Lewis joked about how Jason had probably never held a hammer in his life, they ended up working well together. By day's end, the garden had new rows of plants and several new structures in progress. Rosa found Jason before he left. "Thanks for all your help today." He looked around at the sunlit garden. "It feels good to do something real, something that helps people directly." Rosa smiled. "It really does." Back at the office on Monday, Jason's schedule was packed again. But this time, he found himself daydreaming about the garden, about the sense of purpose he felt there. The board noticed his distraction, especially Stella Barnes. "You look lost in thought, Jason," Stella said after a meeting. "Big deal in the works?" He shook off his musings and forced a brisk nod. "Something like that." Over the next couple of weeks, Jason found a balance. He kept up with Alcott Holdings, meeting with partners and overseeing new ventures. Then he spent time each afternoon at Garden View, checking on Harriet, chatting briefly with Rosa, or playing cards with his grandmother. On weekends, he volunteered at the garden. He became friendly with Dina, Lewis, and others who worked there, helping them plan small expansions. Harriet noticed the change. One afternoon, she smiled at him and said, "You seem happier, Jason. Your face is not so serious anymore." He shrugged, feeling shy. "I guess I realized there's more to life than work." Harriet's eyes sparkled. "Does this new outlook have anything to do with a certain caregiver?" Jason looked away, but the answer was yes. He was drawn to Rosa in a way that felt deeper than anything he had experienced before. She was so unlike the women he knew, who were always after status or money. Rosa wanted none of that from him. She only seemed to care about kindness. One afternoon, Jason worked up the courage to invite Rosa to a high-profile charity gala his company hosted every year. "All proceeds go to children's education programs," he explained. "It's a big event, but it's for a good cause. I'd like you to come as my guest." Rosa's smile faded. I don't have a fancy dress or the right shoes for something like that. I wouldn't fit in. Sure you would, Jason said. You have a big heart, and that's what should matter at a charity event. But Rosa shook her head. I'm not sure, Jason. That's your world, not mine. I'm more comfortable at a garden or a care home. Thanks for asking, though. He did not push it, though disappointment flickered inside him. If he wanted something real with Rosa, he had to respect her comfort level. That night, Jason went to sleep wondering if they were too different for anything lasting. Rosa lived in a small apartment with her sister. She woke up at sunrise to help the elderly or plant vegetables. Jason held power over thousands of employees worldwide. Could they ever meet in the middle? While Jason's personal life blossomed, certain board members noticed he was not as driven as before. Stella Barnes whispered behind closed doors that his new distractions would hurt Alcott Holdings. Alan Reyes, the chief financial officer, warned Jason that the board was uneasy. Some think you're ignoring the company, Alan said. They say you spend afternoons at a care center or a community garden. Stella is especially vocal. Jason frowned. The numbers are still great. Our acquisitions are strong. Alan leaned forward. People have short memories. They want constant growth. They see your shift in priorities as a risk. Jason felt a tightness in his chest. I won't let them push me out of my own company. Then you need to show them you're still committed, Alan advised. Days passed. Harriet's health went up and down, so Jason kept an eye on her. Rosa was always there, with a kind word or a gentle hand. One morning, Harriet confided in Rosa that the gala was very important to Jason's public image. Later that day, Rosa found Jason by the front desk. I'll go with you to the gala, she said, looking nervous but determined. Your grandmother says this event matters for children's education. That's something I believe in. I might feel out of place, but if you really want me there, I'll come. Jason's eyes lit up. I do want you there more than anything. Their tender moment was cut short by Stella Barnes's arrival. She had come to speak with Harriet's doctor about some corporate sponsorship the care center needed. When she noticed Rosa and Jason, her face hardened. She pulled Jason aside and murmured, We still need to finalize seating arrangements for the gala. The governor will sit at our table, of course. Add Rosa more to the head table, Jason said. Stella looked shocked. What? You and I usually attend together. The press expects it. Plans change, Jason said firmly. Stella's mouth tightened, but she simply nodded and walked off. Rosa watched the exchange with a concerned look. Sure you still want to go? Jason joked. I promise it won't be that bad. Rosa smiled, though her eyes had a flicker of worry. I'll try my best not to embarrass you. He touched her arm gently. I'm the one who should worry. You'll see a side of my world that can be cold. At the Grand City Hotel, photographers crowded the entrance to the annual gala. Jason usually glided through these events without a second thought, but tonight he waited at the side door for Rosa to arrive. When she stepped out of a modest taxi, he felt his heart swell. She wore a simple green gown she had borrowed from a friend, her hair pinned up in a loose style. She looked around, uncertain. You look beautiful, he said softly, offering his arm. She relaxed and nodded, letting him guide her through the crowd of cameras. Inside, the ballroom glittered with chandeliers and rich decor. People in designer clothes made small talk while sipping champagne. Rosa stuck close to Jason, her eyes wide at the grandeur. Stella Barnes waved them over to the head table. She greeted Jason warmly, then gave Rosa a polite but distant smile. Nice to see you, Stella said. We're all here to support the Children's Education Fund, after all. They took their seats. Speeches began, highlighting how the money raised would fund after-school programs and scholarships. Rosa leaned toward Jason. Have you ever checked what neighborhoods get the most help from this program? She whispered. Because I've never heard of them reaching some of the places near our garden. Jason felt a twinge of shame. He had never questioned it. I should look into that, he whispered back. A live auction followed, selling luxury vacations and designer items to raise money. Jason noticed Rosa's uneasy expression. The amount of money being spent so casually could have funded so many simple but meaningful community projects. He felt more divided than ever about this event. After the auction, music began. Jason led Rosa to the dance floor, holding her gently as they swayed to the music. This was the first time he had ever brought a genuine date to one of these events, someone who was not looking to climb social ladders. Rosa seemed nervous, but also touched by his attention. "Thank you for coming," he said, gazing into her eyes. She managed a small smile. "I might not fit in here, but it means a lot to see what you do. It helps me understand your world." He leaned in and kissed her softly. Her cheeks warmed, but she did not pull away. The click of a few cameras in the background told him the moment had been captured. For once, he did not care what the media would say. Just then, Stella tapped his shoulder, her face tight. "The governor wants a word," she said. Jason sighed, apologizing to Rosa. "I'll be right back." But the conversation with the governor turned into 3 more conversations with city officials and major donors. By the time he returned to the dance floor, Rosa was gone. She had left a brief text message on his phone. "Had to leave. Not feeling well. Thank you for inviting me." Jason felt a sinking feeling in his chest. He tried calling her, but it went to voicemail. He spotted Stella across the room, her lips curved in a small smile. Suspicion crawled through him. Had Stella said something to drive Rosa away? Desperate to find Rosa, Jason left the gala early. First, he checked the garden, locked and dark. Then he tried the care center, but she was not on shift. Finally, he called Dina Moore. "Jason." Dina answered, sounding sleepy. "Do you know what time it is?" "Dina, please," Jason said, words rushing out. Rosa left the gala upset. "I don't know what happened. I need to talk to her." Dina sighed. "She's home. She has her own place in the building where I live. Don't say I never did you a favor." She gave him the address, and he drove across town. His heart was pounding when he knocked on the door. After a long pause, Rosa opened a crack. She wore pajamas, her eyes red from tears. "It's late," she whispered. "I know," he said. "I'm sorry. Please let me in. I need to know what happened." Rosa opened the door slowly, letting him enter her small but cozy apartment. Plants lined her windowsill. The walls were decorated with photos of the garden and pictures of her family. "Why did you leave?" Jason asked, standing in the middle of her living room. Rosa sat on her sofa, arms wrapped around her knees. "I spoke with Stella Barnes. She told me how the board expects you to marry someone who fits your image. She said your relationship with me would not help your business goals. And deep down, I know she's right." Jason's jaw tightened. She had no right to say that. "She doesn't speak for me." Rosa's eyes filled with fresh tears. "But isn't it true? You're a billionaire, and I'm a care assistant and a community garden volunteer. We live in different worlds." Jason came closer, kneeling so he could meet her gaze. "Our worlds might be different, but I don't care. I've met plenty of people who matched me in status, but never loved me for who I am. You're the first person who sees me, not my money." She hesitated. "I don't want you to lose your company or your reputation because of me." Jason gently took her hand. "Would you rather I keep a company built on fake values and lose the only person who matters to me? Because I wouldn't. I can still run Alcott Holdings, but it's time for me to set new priorities. I've spent my whole life chasing deals. Now I want to make a real difference, and I want you with me." Rosa closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I don't want to get hurt. I've seen too many people promise things they can't keep." He swallowed hard. "Give me a chance to prove it." She searched his eyes for a long moment, then slowly nodded. Jason felt relief flood him. He pulled her into a tight embrace. For the first time, he truly believed that what they had was worth fighting for. A few days later, Harriet had a scare with her blood pressure and ended up in the hospital for overnight observation. Jason rushed to be with her. That same evening, Alan Reyes called with urgent news. "Stella has convinced several board members to hold an emergency meeting," Alan said. "They plan to vote on removing you as CEO. They're saying you've lost sight of the company's goals." Jason felt anger and fear. But as he looked at Harriet, who dozed fitfully in the hospital bed, he realized how little their power play mattered compared to her health. Still, he knew he had to act, or he might lose everything. He spent the night by Harriet's bedside. Rosa came by after her shift, holding his hand. When morning came, Harriet opened her eyes, saw them together, and managed a weak smile. "You two look good together," she whispered. Jason gently kissed Harriet's forehead. "Grandma, I have to go handle something at the company. I promise I'll be back." Harriet gave his hand a squeeze. "I believe in you," she said softly. That afternoon, Jason walked into the Alcott Holdings boardroom. Stella and several directors were already seated, wearing grim expressions. Alan stood in the corner, looking tense. Stella wasted no time. "We have lost confidence in you, Jason. You've been absent. You show interest in personal matters above the company's needs. You're risking our future." Jason stared at each board member. Some avoided his gaze, clearly uneasy. Others nodded in agreement with Stella. Jason took a deep breath. "I built this company up from what my grandmother started," Jason began. "We have grown in wealth and power, but we have lost our heart. For too long, I valued profit above everything. Now I see that we can still be profitable while making a real difference in our communities. We don't have to choose one or the other." He laid out a new plan: increase support for local neighborhoods, fairer business practices, and real oversight on the charities Alcott Holdings funded. He also explained how real success should not only be measured by quarterly gains, but by how many lives the company improved. Stella rolled her eyes. "That's a sweet idea, but you live in a world that demands growth. The board is already set to vote you out." Jason's voice was firm. "I own the majority of the shares, which my grandmother left in my name. Legally, I can restructure the board. If you choose not to work with me on this, I'll exercise that power." Shocked silence followed. Stella's face paled. She glanced at the other members, realizing they might lose their positions if they challenged him. Finally, some of them spoke up in support of Jason, admitting that a renewed sense of purpose could help Alcott Holdings' long-term image and stability. One by one, the board voted, either to stay under Jason's new vision or resign. Stella and a few others refused to change. Jason calmly thanked them for their service and told them they were free to leave the company. Alan was the first to nod, looking relieved. "I stand with Jason," he said. With that, the power shift happened. Jason kept his role as CEO, but with a smaller, more supportive board. Before he left, Stella turned to him with a bitter look. "You might think you won, but this new direction could fail." Jason looked at her calmly. "I've learned there are more important things than holding on to a vision that only values profit. You've done what you felt was right, and now I'm doing the same." She stormed out. Jason stood in the quiet boardroom for a moment, letting the tension ease. Then Alan patted his shoulder. "Congratulations," he said. "I hope you really can lead us in a better direction." Jason smiled. "I will try." After the board meeting, Jason rushed back to the hospital. Harriet was awake, sipping tea. She smiled the moment she saw him. He pulled up a chair beside her bed. "How did it go?" she asked, voice still weak but full of concern. "I'm still CEO," Jason said softly, taking her hand. "We're making changes to do more good in the world, just like you always wanted." Harriet's eyes gleamed with tears. "I'm so proud of you." Jason stayed with her until Rosa arrived, bringing Harriet's favorite flowers. Harriet was soon released back to the care center, where she would continue her recovery. Jason and Rosa walked out together. He told Rosa all about the meeting, and she smiled wider than he had ever seen. "You really did it," she said, her tone filled with admiration. "You stood up for what you believe in, and you won." He slipped his hand into hers. "I had the best inspiration." A month later, Harriet was well enough to visit the newly expanded section of the Evergreen Community Garden. Alcott Holdings had provided funds, but more important was that Jason and many employees had volunteered time to help. Now, the garden had a bigger greenhouse and better irrigation. The local families were overjoyed. Harriet leaned on Rosa's arm as she strolled past the blooming plants. It's like my garden from years ago, Harriet said with a soft laugh. But bigger. They came to a small outdoor gathering area where Dina, Lewis, and other volunteers waited. Jason was there as well, waiting with a nervous glint in his eye. When Harriet and Rosa approached, he gave Harriet a gentle hug. Then he turned to Rosa and took her hands in his. "Rosa Moore," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. "You showed me that true wealth is not about money. It's about love and caring for others. You cared for my grandmother when I couldn't be there. You gave me a reason to see the world differently. Will you marry me?" Rosa's eyes widened and tears began to slip down her cheeks. She nodded, speechless at first. Then she found her voice. "Yes," she whispered. "I will." Cheers broke out among the volunteers. Harriet wiped tears from her own eyes. Jason slipped a simple but elegant ring onto Rosa's finger. They embraced, the garden bursting with applause and laughter all around them. A powerful billionaire, he no longer felt alone. He and Rosa worked to blend their two worlds. On some weekends, they hosted staff from Alcott Holdings at the garden for volunteer days. On others, they attended vital business events together, but only those that truly helped people in need. The darkest chapter of Jason's life ended in that hospital room, where he feared losing his grandmother and his company in the same moment. That fear had forced him to see what truly mattered. In the end, Harriet recovered enough to watch her grandson find love and to see her own wish fulfilled, that her life's work, passed down to him, would not just make money, but also bring hope to some weeks later. Harriet moved out of the care center and into a comfortable suite in Jason's home, with full-time help that also allowed her to keep her freedom. She often teased that she was more excited about the wedding than the couple themselves. Alcott Holdings announced new community-focused ventures, gaining positive press. Even some who doubted Jason admitted that the company's new image attracted loyal customers and stable growth. The children's education charity also adjusted its programs to reach more neighborhoods, after Jason personally investigated how the money was spent. Rosa served on a special committee that decided which local schools would receive direct support, though Jason remained hers. And on a bright summer day, surrounded by flowers, family, and friends, Jason Alcott and Rosa Moore said their vows. The sun shone warm upon them, as they promised to stand beside each other through every trial. Their journey would not always be easy, but they would face it with open hearts, ready to help each other and the world they shared. In that garden, they found the kind of wealth that no boardroom could measure, a wealth of love and belonging that would last a lifetime. And Harriet, smiling in the front row, could not have imagined a better ending for her grandson's story.